So recently in Europe, we had severe weather warnings and we had severe low temperature all across Europe. And if you were traveling anywhere between, I would say, the last week of February up to, say, March 3rd, you would have been aware of the severe weather and low temperature that has affected a lot of travelers across Europe. I was also one of those travelers that was affected. My family and I traveled to London. Actually, we landed in London, Luton, and we traveled by Easyjet. Traveling to London, Luton was fine. We left, I believe, was on the 24th of February, and the weather was good, so we got where we were going okay. We were going to visit a friend, and our friend lived in a town called Corby. And in order to get to Corby, the only airport that you can actually, not the only, but the most accessible airport to take you closest to Corby would be London Luton Airport. For myself and my family, it's the second time that we have used London Luton Airport and EasyJet. I will not make this review drawn out. I was just trying to gather a picture for you guys as you listen to it. I will get straight to the point, and because this is about a review of EasyJet free accommodation and how it affected us, my viewpoint in it in particular, and hope it helps or hope it opened the eyes for some of the people. Long story short, returning from London Luton Airport to Zurich, Switzerland on Friday, March 2nd, 2018. We were scheduled for the 5:35 p.m. flight that was heading to Zurich from London Luton Airport. But keep in mind that the days before, the weather was really severe. So being reasonable, we kind of knew, my wife, myself, and my son kind of knew that getting out of England to Switzerland is a 50-50 chance. So we were prepared for a delay or a cancellation, and at the same time we were open to get home. We got to London Luton Airport about 2 p.m. Even though our flights were at 5:35 p.m., because we had to travel from Corby to London Luton, we decided let's move out early. Let's try to get to the airport as soon as possible. While we were there at the airport, considering that I've got the EasyJet app on my phone that gives you moment-to-moment update as to what's going on. So between the EasyJet app on my phone and the board at the airport that tells you what's going on, I believe we were pretty informed. As it neared about 4 o'clock, the board and the app kind of notified us that we will have a delay. The delay first was mentioned that it would be about an hour or two, and then as it neared 5 o'clock, our greatest fear displayed on the app and then on the board. Our flight was cancelled. So when a flight is cancelled, EasyJet sends you a notification, and the notification pretty much gives you an option. You can ask for a refund or you can opt for free accommodation. So this is 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in the evening, we immediately click free accommodation. As soon as we click free accommodation, it prompts us that we are in a queue waiting to be served, and we were prompted that we are number 18 in this queue. I didn't quite believe it, but that's what was there. I just thought they just put this number on your phone screen just to psychologically control you, that well, you are in line, and you know it's a busy period and everyone is being served. From 5 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we're still at number 18. We're still sitting at the airport. We're still at London Luton Airport. So this is 11 o'clock at night. So now we are at the airport for 9 hours, waiting to go home and waiting to get accommodation. So I got frustrated and I decided there's no one you can call. There's no desk you can actually go to and speak to anyone. So I decided, let's take it online. So I went to my Twitter account and I exuded my anger on Twitter, calling out Easyjet on this accommodation because we've been here 9 hours, and even though I know that it's low temperature and a lot of people might be waiting to be served, 9 hours I thought was more than reasonable to sit quiet without any noise. As soon as I made a tweet, I realized that number 18 that I stood there for 9 hours suddenly turned into number 14. I waited and waited and waited. At 11:53 p.m., I decided, you know what, this is not working out because it's about 7 minutes to the next day and we haven't got any accommodation. So I decided to send another tweet. And right after I sent that other tweet, about 2-3 minutes after I sent that other tweet, the second tweet online, all of a sudden, number 14 disappeared and a place was found for us, and the direction and everything came in on the phone how to get to the hotel. Keep in mind, we're traveling as 3 people. So before I even cover the issue of the hotel, let's cover Easyjet's adult policy. See, Easyjet has this policy that if you're 16 years old, you are considered as an adult. Now, that may work in Easyjet's favor, but this is where it backfires. Why I believe that 16 is still too young to charge as an adult. The reason being that Easyjet knew that we were traveling as 3 people. See, to Easyjet, we're not actually people, we're just numbers on a screen. So Easyjet says, we will find accommodation for you, and the accommodation that we will find for you is 1 room with a twin bed and 1 room with a single bed. So it's like, okay, sounds good, sounds reasonable. Now, when the accommodation finally came through, Easyjet had a twin bed at the Highwayman Hotel in Dunstable, about 25 minutes drive from the airport, and they had a single room booked at a completely different hotel somewhere in Luton. So even though we were traveling as 3 people, Easyjet has now found us, just as they promised, a room with a twin bed and a room with a single bed, but in 2 extremely different hotels. Now, the 16-year-old, which is our son, it didn't even cross our mind. We would not even consider splitting up as a family. Moreover, I could not even consider sending my 16-year-old to Luton to find a hotel. He's 16 years old. He can't check into a hotel by himself. So Easyjet need to consider that. You need to consider, as much as you benefit when you charge an adult fare for a 16-year-old. In cases like this where you have to find accommodation, you have to stop seeing the passengers as just names or numbers in the paper and find out a little bit more intimate details about them. Are they a family? Are they 3 adults? Are they really together, or did they just book it together? Things like that. It's your responsibility to find out. But I thought that was crazy to find us the accommodation at 2 separate hotels. Anyway, what we did, we opted for the Highwayman, which offered the bigger bed. And when we got to the Highwayman, it was past midnight because we had to find a taxi cab, and I believe it was about £24 from the airport to the Highwayman. And I've asked for a receipt because according to Easyjet, they will take the receipt, if you could send a copy of the receipt to them, and they will refund you the money. I don't know how that's going to go because it hasn't happened yet. We just came back from London today, and I thought, let me get this out of my system before I even sleep on it, because then my attitude towards it might be different and I might not be so enthused, and I probably just say, oh, you know what, I'm home now, forget it. But just for people who might be in a similar situation in the future, I'm doing this video so people could, take extra measures not to fall in the situation that we fell into. So the Highwayman is a pub stroke hotel. When it comes to Easyjet, I am not a fan. I traveled Easyjet 3 times in my entire life of travel. And the first time I traveled Easyjet, I vowed that I would not travel Easyjet again. That was in 2014. That was before seats were allocated to passenger. That's when it was a free-for-all. There was a time when you go into Easyjet, no seat was assigned to you. So everybody was running around like busy bee trying to take seat, and no one had any right over another one that this seat is mine or that seat is yours. And because of that, an encounter that I had back in 2014, we clashed at checking in, and I will never forget what she said to me. She said to me, "Sir, you are flying budget." And I said to her, "You're absolutely right." So pretty much what she was saying, you're flying budget. You can expect to be treated at budget. With Easyjet, I've always attached the notion, buy cheap, buy twice. The thing is, from Zurich, Switzerland, Easyjet is the only airline that flies to London Luton Airport. And that's the airport that I needed to go, that my family and then I needed to be at. So we pretty much had no other choice than to fly Easyjet. However, I know that anything that you buy cheap, you're going to buy twice. When I say buy cheap, buy twice, I don't necessarily mean you're going to pay cash 2 times. But what I do mean is that with cheap things come certain consequences. And with Easyjet, the consequences is Easyjet is a cheap airline, and Easyjet treats their passengers cheap. Because I think it's a study that somebody who probably have a certificate in a frame thinks, well, I've done human study, and most people who buy cheap or fly cheap, you can treat them this way or you can treat them that way. Because Easyjet treated myself and my family as cheap as dirt. I wasn't expecting to be put up in the Waldorf Astoria or the Hyatt. The Highwayman Hotel is as cheap as it gets, because what I did while I was at Highwayman, I looked online, how much a night would this place normally cost? And it was about 40 francs, which would turn out to maybe about 25 pounds or 30 pounds a night. It's a very cheap place. I done a review on it, which I will put the link below. I won't get into that so much right now, but Easyjet treats its customers cheap. They say they were giving you food allowance, and it's me, my wife, and my child. And we went and we had breakfast. And by the time we were ready to have lunch, the woman at the hotel says, "You've pretty much exhausted your daily allowance that Easyjet agreed for you to eat." So I asked, how much exactly was it? And she says, well, Easyjet says it's £8 per person for the entire day. So The whole day we were supposed to survive on £8. The breakfast that we had three. I had a coffee, my wife had a coffee, my son had a hot chocolate, and we had 3 full English breakfasts. And that was over £24, and our tab was out. So for the rest of the day, Easyjet left you high and dry and hungry. You know, I was a bit annoyed. Can't say I wasn't annoyed, but I kept in mind that, you know what, the responsibility is not only Easyjet. The responsibility is also ours. We flew cheap. And despite you want to say you've got a friend in the UK that you came to visit and this was the nearest airport, maybe if you had flown Swiss Air and you had to drive further away from Heathrow or from Gatwick, maybe you wouldn't have had this experience, but you just have to face the fact that you flew cheap. On top of that, when we got to check in at the Highwayman, which was after midnight, the receptionist was away because the Highwayman is, like I say, it's like a pub, a public house stroke hotel. So the receptionist area is unmanned, but there was a phone there. You had to call a number and she had to come, and she also was a bit annoyed because she was like, this room has been booked with Easyjet since 7 p.m. Where have you been? And I said, we've been sitting at the airport for the last 9-10 hours. And she says, well, Easyjet had a group that came in earlier. As it says to the receptionist, we're very sorry, you know, but Easyjet only just contacted us after I started a tweet rant online. And so I don't know how that worked, how that happened, because the Highwayman Hotel says Easyjet confirmed all booking at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. And 5 hours after 7 p.m., we were still in limbo. We still didn't know what was going on. So anyway, let me wrap this up real quick. Like I said, if you want to know about the Highwayman, I don't think the Highwayman Hotel is the only hotel that Easyjet work with as a partner, because the other hotel that my son was supposed to go to is considered a Holiday Inn, I believe, in Luton somewhere. But the Highwayman Hotel reflects clearly, transparently how Easyjet value its customers. And I just want to put that out there. So Easyjet are its representative, because the woman at the Highwayman says she didn't actually deal with Easyjet. It's a middle company called Capita. I wrote an email to them, no one responds. But like I said, lesson learned. And I take full response. I don't take full responsibility. I take, in this case, 60% of the responsibility, because at my age, I should know better. Buy cheap, buy twice. So Easyjet has its plus, has its minus, but I think that's pretty much it for us as a family flying with Easyjet, because we had our experience with them in the past in 2014, and Easyjet kind of stepped up. I wouldn't say Easyjet stepped up. EU regulations imposes certain things in the airline, and airlines such as Easyjet has to conform. So I guess if those imposition wasn't made by EU law, all of Easyjet passengers over this weekend would have slept on the floor in London Luton Airport.